All right, I'm glad everybody could join us for the kickoff for the Sentinel Initiative. Now, some people may be wondering why I chose to name it this, but it's easy. Here's why. So, the word Sentinel itself, when it's used in a combined group of military vets, members, and first responders, the definition shifts from a physical guard on a watchtower to a shared lifelong identity of vigilant protection, mutual preservation, and community service. So this is kind of the breakdown. This is the first week. This is the first iteration of this. And this one, the theme is God as rock and fortress. So for the introduction part for this lesson, I'm going to ask you, and you can pause if you need to, how many of you have ever been in a position, a real position, not a training exercise, where the ground underneath you didn't feel solid? Maybe that is actually literal. You were in a vehicle that hit an IED, or the floor of a structure you were clearing felt like it could give way at any time. Or maybe it was even figurative. Your marriage was cracking, your career was ending, your mind was doing things you couldn't control. Here's what I know about every person in this room right now. You've been trained to find solid ground. You know what it means to establish a position, to find cover, to put something between you and the thing that's trying to kill you. So that instinct, that training, it doesn't turn off when you take off the uniform. So tonight we're going to talk about the most solid ground there is. Not a doctrine, not a program. The God who calls himself your rock and your fortress. And I want you to hear something. This isn't poetry. David, the man who wrote this psalm, was writing from a foxhole. He was writing with dirt under his fingernails and enemies at the wire. This is operational language for a God who shows up. So now we're going to take a moment and we're going to cover the first discussion question. So, a quick question for the room, and then I'm going to mute the sound. In one sentence, what does the idea of God as your rock make you think or feel right now? So, if you want to share, raise your hand or however you feel. I'll call on some people. If you're looking at this on the recording side, you can still use that discussion prompt QR code that's in the window. So go ahead, pause it right here, and then we'll continue on. Okay, so here's the background on what we're going to be talking about. So Psalm 18 is one of the most important psalms in the Bible, and here's why. We know exactly when David wrote it. The header of the psalm tells us it's a song David wrote on the day that the Lord delivered him from the hand of all his enemies and from the hand of Saul. This isn't a Sunday school poem. This is an actual after-action report. David had been running for years. King Saul, the man who was supposed to be his commander, his leader, the one he served faithfully, turned on him, sent kill teams after him. David lived in caves, in the wilderness, in enemy territory. He led a ragged band of men described in 1 Samuel chapter 22 as everyone who was in distress, in debt, and discontented. Sound like anyone you know? I mean, honestly, if you think about it, you can find those people dime a dozen anywhere. Someone who's in distress, obviously with today's day and age, someone who's in debt, and people who are discontented. But David wasn't writing from a palace when he wrote this. He was writing from the other side of survival. He had been hunted, betrayed, exhausted, and pushed to the edge, and he made it through. And the first thing he does isn't write a tactics manual. He writes a worship song. Because the first thing David wants the world to know is, I didn't survive because I was strong enough. I survived because God was my rock. So now what we're going to do is we're going to read through this together. So if you take a second, pause this, go ahead and turn your Bible to Psalm 18, and we're going to start with verses 1 through 3. So here on the in-person side, people are actually going to be reading this, and we're going to be doing it together. If you're on the recorded side of this, go ahead and read through Psalm 18, 1 through 3. And I'll let this sit here for just a second so it gives you a chance to pause it in case you want to read the version that I've got up on the screen, which is the New King James Version. Okay, so this is going to take us to discussion prompt number 2, and I'm going to kind of leave the screen right here. But I want you to take a few seconds to think of one image from those verses, 1 through 3, rock, fortress, shield, stronghold, that resonates with you. If you want to share, that's for those that are in the room. That's fine. I'm going to go ahead and pause this for a second so those that are watching this on the online recorded version can pause for a second. Okay, so look at that language. And what we're going to do is we're going to count the metaphors David stacks all in 2 verses. So it's rock, fortress, deliverer, strength, shield, horn of salvation, stronghold. Those are 7 images in 2 verses. That's not casual. That's a man who has tested God from every angle and found him solid every single time. Now I want you to hear this the way a soldier hears it. A rock is what you build a fighting position on, what you take cover behind. It's what you dig into when you can't go anywhere else. A fortress isn't a house. It's a hardened structure designed to withstand assault. A shield isn't decoration. It's the thing between you and incoming fire. A stronghold is the position you fall back to when everything else is overrun. So David isn't using theological language. He's using tactical language. He's describing God the way a warrior describes the thing that kept him alive. Here's why that matters for you tonight in this room or watching this recording. Some of you have come here with ground moving under your feet. Maybe it's been moving for years. Your marriage, your identity, your mind, your faith, and you've been doing what you were trained to do. Adapt, overcome, and push through. But here's the thing nobody has told you up to this point. You were never designed to be your own solid ground. Let me say that again. You were never designed to be your own solid ground. Every one of us was trained to be strong, self-sufficient, mission capable, and that training has served you. It has kept you alive. But somewhere along the way, that training became a cage. Because when you believe you must be the rock for everyone else, you never let yourself stand on one. So let's go deeper in this psalm. Let's go down, and we're going to drop down to verses 4 through 6. And here, live, we're going to read through it. I'm going to put it up on the screen so those watching can review it afterwards. So go ahead and pause right there if you're online. Okay, so I want you to sit with verse 4 for a second. The pangs of death surrounded me, and the floods of ungodliness made me afraid. That's not figurative for David. He had been trying to survive. Men were trying to put a spear through his chest. He had sleepless nights in caves, wondering if tomorrow was the day they'd find him. He knew what it felt like for death to tighten the circle. Some of you know that feeling, not from reading about it, from living it. The convoy that got hit, the structure fire that almost didn't let you out, the night the phone rang and everything changed, or maybe it's slower than that. The death that surrounds you is the slow kind, the death of a marriage, the death of purpose, the death of the person you used to be. David names it honestly. He doesn't minimize it. He doesn't slap a Bible verse on it and pretend it's fine. He says, death surrounded me. The floods made me afraid. The snares confronted me. And then in verse 6, in his distress, he called out. I called out upon the Lord and cried out to my God. Notice the order. Distress comes first, then the call. David didn't have it together when he called on God. He called on God because he didn't have it together, and God heard him. This is a pattern. We see this over and over and over through the Bible, where someone's in distress first, then they finally reach out. Now they start getting the help that they are looking for. So the Hebrew word for distress here is tsar. It means tight, narrow, constricted. It's the feeling of walls closing in, the feeling no options left. David is saying, when I had nowhere to go, I called out, and God's ears were open. So now let's look at this next discussion piece. David names the tight place honestly. So here live, we're going to talk about different pieces of this. If you're looking at it online recorded, I want you to pause it here and then finish this sentence. Right now, the tight place I'm facing is, and fill in the blank. Okay, now what we're going to do is we're going to skip down to verses 16 through 19, and we're going to watch what God does. So here it is. It's up on the screen for those that are watching this recorded. Live, we're going to read it together, so I'm going to pause right here for a second. Pause it if you're going to read from the screen. Okay, so there's three things here. First, he drew me out of many waters. The image is drowning. David felt like he was going under, and God reached down and pulled him out. That's not a distant God. That's a God who gets his hands wet. The second is they were too strong for me. David, the giant killer, the warrior king, the man after God's own heart, admits his enemies were too strong for him. That's not weakness. That's honesty. And honesty is the first step onto solid ground. The third, and this is the one I want you to look at, write down, and pay attention to. He brought me out into a broad place. Okay, that broad place. The Hebrew word for that is merchav. It means a wide open space, room to breathe, room to move. So David went from Tsar, the constricted, suffocating, no way out place, to merchav, open ground, freedom, space. That's what God does for us. He doesn't just rescue you from the tight place, He brings you into a wide one. He doesn't just stop the bleeding, He gives you room to heal. So I'm going to pause right here on this screen for those of you who are watching this on the recorded side. Here live, we're actually going to talk about this next discussion piece. So has anyone here experienced a broad place after a tight season in life? If so, if anyone would like to share. So if you're on the recording side of this, just pause it right here, and then I want you to do this. It's just one sentence about what helped you move into that space, from the tight space into the wide open space, the space where there's the freedom feeling was there. That doesn't have to be long. I mean, simply it could just be one sentence, but I want you to name the help, not the details. Name the help. Okay, so now let me bring this into our world for a second, because some of you are in the tsar right now, the tight place, the narrow space, and I want to talk about what that looks like for people like us. For a combat veteran, the tight place might be the loop in your head, the memory that plays on repeat, the hypervigilance that won't let you sit with your back to a door, the anger that shows up sideways, not on the battlefield, but in your kitchen, at your kids, in traffic. For a first responder, the tight place might be the call you can't shake, the one where you got there too late, the one where it was a kid, that one that plays behind your eyelids every time you try to sleep. For any of us, the tight place might be the identity crisis that hits when the uniform comes off, when the mission ends. You spent years knowing exactly who you were, your rank, your role, your unit, your purpose, and then one day it's gone, and the person staring back at you in the mirror is a stranger. Here's what I want you to hear, though. David names the tight place, and then he names what God does in it. God becomes the rock in the middle of the shaking, not after the shaking stops. It happens in the middle of it. So that next discussion piece, it's a quick practical check. What is one concrete thing you can do this week? An active, physical act of fleeing to God for protection, to seek refuge, or to trust when the shaking starts. In Hebrew, this act is called chasah. And what we're going to do here live is we're going to kind of talk about this amongst ourselves. So pause it right here. Think about it if you're on the recording side of this while we cover that piece. Okay, so we're going to move on to verses 30 through 36 now. So again, I'm going to put them up on the screen for those of you who are watching the recording side. The live side, we're going to go through them as we're going through this. So on the screen is 30 to 33. So now I'm going to continue on the screen. This is going to be 34, 35, and 36. All right, now, did you catch verse 35? Your gentleness has made me great. The same God who is a fortress, who arms David for war, who teaches his hands to fight, that same God makes David great through gentleness. This matters because some of you have spent so long behind being hard that you've forgotten that strength and gentleness are not opposites. The strongest thing God does for David isn't giving him a weapon, it's holding him up with his right hand. The fortress isn't just for protection, it's for restoration. God doesn't build walls around you to keep you in survival mode. He builds walls around you so you can finally stop surviving and start healing. Let me give you a picture. Think about a forward operating base or a FOB. The walls, the barriers, the guard towers. They're not there so you stay in a fight. They're there so that behind them you can rest, you can eat, you can take off your gear, you can close your eyes for 5 hours and not worry about incoming. That's what God is offering you, not just a defensive position, a rest position, a place where you can stop being the rock for everyone else and lean on the one who was designed to hold you. So what does that look like on a Thursday morning, on a Monday morning, on a Tuesday morning, whatever day it is? How do you build on the rock? Let me give you 3 things. The first is going to be name the shaking. David didn't pretend the ground was solid when it wasn't. He said, death surrounded me, the floods made me afraid. Before you can stand on the rock, you must admit that what you've been standing on isn't working. That might mean saying out loud to yourself, to God, to someone you trust, I'm not okay. My marriage is in trouble. My anger is out of control. I haven't slept through the night in 3 years. I drink too much. I'm losing myself. Look, that's not weakness. That's reconnaissance. You're identifying the terrain so you can find better ground. The second is stop being your own fortress. You were trained to be self-sufficient. That training has kept you alive, but it's killing you now. Self-sufficiency becomes isolation. Isolation becomes despair, and despair becomes the tight place David described, the snares of death. This week, I want you to try something radical. Ask for help. Not from me, although I'm here, but from God. Just a simple, honest prayer. You don't need fancy words. David's prayer in verse 6 was basically, God, I'm drowning. Help. That's enough. God isn't grading your prayer. He's listening for your voice. The third part of that, let God bring you into the broad place. Some of you have been so long in the tight space that it feels normal. The anxiety, the anger, the numbness. You've adapted to it the way you adapted to everything else. You just keep moving. But God isn't offering you survival. He's offering you Merchov, wide open space, room to breathe, room to feel something besides adrenaline and exhaustion. That means letting go of the idea that healing is weakness. It means showing up. Whether it's here, it could be next Sunday, or somewhere like this. It means being willing to believe that the ground can be solid again. Not because you made it solid, because God is solid and He's inviting you to stand on Him. So what we're going to look at right now is we're going to look for a practical tool for this week. Okay? When you feel the ground shaking, when the anxiety spikes, when the anger flares, when the memories press in, I want you to say Psalm 18:2 out loud. Not in your head, out loud. And what is Psalm 18:2? The Lord is my rock and my fortress and my deliverer, my God, my strength, in whom I will trust. Oh, man. Making it through. We're making it through. So it might feel strange the first time. That's fine. Say it anyway. The Hebrew word chasah, it means to take refuge, to run to shelter. Every time you say that verse, you're practicing chasah. You're running to the fortress. And you know what? This fortress never fails. So here's the one thing I want you to carry out of this room tonight, where if you're watching this recorded later, you were never designed to be your own solid ground. And you don't have to be. The God who armed David for battle, who pulled him out of deep water, who brought him from the tight place into the wide open, that God is the same yesterday, today, and forever. And he's offering you what he offered David: a rock that doesn't move, a fortress that doesn't fall, a hand that holds you up with gentleness. You don't have to have it all figured out. You don't have to believe perfectly. You just call out, the way David did, from the tight place, afraid and overwhelmed, and let God be the ground under your feet. So now let's move into some practical applications. So we're going to cover 3 from just tonight alone, or even if you're watching this later on the recorded side. So the first is identify your tight place. Be honest with yourself about where the ground is shaking right now. You can't stand on the rock if you won't admit the ground you're on is moving. All right, the second one is practice chasah. All right, the taking refuge. When the shaking starts this week, speak Psalm chapter 18, verse 2 out loud. Say it in your truck, your car. Say it at 3 in the morning. Say it when the anger flares. Run to the fortress. All right, the third one is let someone else see you. Whether it's me, whether it's God in prayer, whether it's someone you trust, let one person see the real terrain this week. Not the report, not what we're telling them. Let them see the real thing. So what we're going to do at this point is we're going to have the next and this discussion piece right here. So we're going to do 2 things together. All right, here live, I want you to say Psalm 18:2 out loud with me, and I'm going to pause right here. Okay, so the second part of that is write one concrete action you will do this week on a piece of paper, or if you want, use the QR code. It'll go to a Google form, but it's 1 sentence, and give it to me as you leave, or if you're online watching this later, I'll see it, and what I'm going to do is any of these I will pray over in my prayers this week for you. So now, this week's action step. Write Psalm 18:2 on a piece of paper or in your phone. Read it out loud at least once a day, morning and evening if you can, really. Do it both times. But when you feel the ground shake, say it. Practice running to the fortress. So the reflection questions for this week. Where in your life have you been trying to be your own rock? What would it look like to let God hold that weight instead? So I encourage everyone to follow up with the reading of the entirety of Psalm 18, because when you read Psalm 18, you realize that it's David's full after-action report. And you'll notice, and I want you to notice, every time David names what God did, and then notice how honest he is about the battle. And that's where a lot of us struggle frequently, very frequently, is being honest about that particular battle that is going on right then. We don't want people to see behind the curtain. We don't want people to know that there's something under the surface. And we have to get away from that. Healing and caring about our mental health and caring about our trauma and things that we've been through is not a weakness by any way, shape, or form. So next week is when we talk about that part. I go ahead before then and read Psalm chapter 34, verses 17 through 20 at least once. But then I also want you to read Isaiah chapter 61, verses 1 through 3. But I want you to read that one slowly twice, all three of those verses. And as you read these, ask yourself, where do I need God's healing or freedom this week? Which is going to leave us with the key truth. And it's the same one that I was saying earlier. You were never designed to be your own solid ground. Carry this with you as you go throughout the week and let God become the solid ground for you. So if you want, as you see these, or you may be watching this online from a number of these places already anyway, but I have a Sentinel Initiative Facebook page. There's a QR code for that and also a link. Same with YouTube, Rumble, TikTok. So appreciate it. Keep coming back. I'm going to keep uploading these every week as we do them live, so those online can still take part as well. Have a blessed and wonderful day.
When I feel the strain of the war.